I'm on the north side of my garage. What we have over here now is 6 different gutter guards that we've installed. I'll walk you through each one of them. I'm up at gutter level, and this morning I wanted to just check in on the gutter guards. So I'm on the north side of my garage. You can see here some of the moss that's starting to come back to life on the roof itself. So the reason I wanted to test the gutter guards both on the north and south side is because it's essentially 2 different ecosystems. The north not getting the sunshine during the day and having the buildup of algae, lichen, and moss on the roof will be a good barometer as to how well the gutter guards do on this side. So what we have over here now is 6 different gutter guards that we've installed. I'll walk you through each one of them. Again, we had a pretty good sized rainstorm last night, so you'll now start to see debris collecting on top of the gutter guards, but you'll get a sense kind of early on what we have up here and how things look in the very earliest stages of this experiment. This is Clean Mesh, a product that we used to call Microscreen. It's made by a company called Semco, or Southeast Metals Company, which is based in Jacksonville, Florida. This was a product that I actually liked. It was kind of a nice weave of micro mesh screen. I always felt it was a pretty optimal size screen with the framework behind it. So you've got the micro mesh screen here, then you've got an aluminum framework underneath it. So it was a nice rigid product. It's made out of one piece of continuous aluminum, roll-formed aluminum. Has a series of louvers in it, which in this light you may be able to see a little bit through that screen. There's 2 different versions of this product. There's the version that lives within the gutter, so it screws down on the front lip, put it up at an angle and screw it to the fascia board. And then there's another one that's the panel, and this is actually the panel version of it. So it slides up under the first course of shingles. The weight of the shingles holds it in place on the backside. We screw it down on the front lip. There's some characteristics about this product that will be important to note over time, but I will highlight them now. This product, as I just mentioned, has got the framework behind it. It's a continuous piece of aluminum with a screen that gets inserted during the manufacturing process. So the nice thing about it is you can see it has a low transition from the back of the screen to the front of the screen, allowing most of the leaves and debris to just blow right off the top. There's very little resistance from the screen onto the front lip here. However, and this panel may be one of those panels, there's also a series of weep holes at the front that are supposed to be exposed, supposed to be visible, and this panel does not appear to have that going on. So I didn't really discriminate between the panels we put up. We've just basically took what we had in inventory and we stuck it up here. But one of the issues with this product has been its quality control, and it took us a while to figure this out. But these weep holes, if they're not exposed across the front, can allow for a puddling or a pooling of water as it comes across the screen and underneath the screen. Those weep holes are supposed to act as the last line of defense to allow water to go inside the gutter and prevent it from pulling up at the end and then dripping over the edge of the gutter. This panel appears to be really tightly made, so the distance between the screen and the opening, essentially, this little groove here, we can't really see the weep holes in here, and I suspect this is going to be a problem for this particular panel in especially hard rains. My suspicion is we're going to see more water coming over the top and around the gutter and dripping off the bottom. But time will tell once we get out here to actually inspect this during the rains. But I bring this up because the manufacturing methods and the quality control within that can make the difference between a product that is otherwise pretty good, working well, and a product not working well. And it's very similar to installing a good product. If you don't know what you're doing when you install it, it doesn't matter how good the product is. In this particular case, one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it, because it's becoming more readily available at home improvement stores, it's paramount to make sure that the opening across the leading edge there is visible. If it's not, then I would advise potentially steering clear. But again, we're in the earliest stages of this test, and a lot more to come on that. This is our LeafLock micro mesh gutter guard. It is a three-piece system. It consists of a stainless steel screen down the middle, and then it has aluminum framework at the bottom here at the lip that you can see, and then up under the shingles that is somewhat hidden. And this roof is a little there you can kind of see the back edge of it. So nice thing about this is the the stainless steel screen encompasses the entire opening of the gutter. So this is a 6-inch gutter with a 6-inch panel on it, but whether you had the 5-inch version or the 6-inch version, the screen opening is the same size for either system. So the only real difference between the 5 and 6-inch version is the rear portion of this. That rear panel is either a little bit narrow or a little bit wider, depending on the size of gutter that you're putting it up under. Now, in this particular case, what we did was we installed it up under the shingles. This roof, it's a little hard to tell, but this roof has an overhang on it that encroaches into the gutters. Well, here you can kind of see between the two pieces. So you can see how the roof, comes into the gutter to some degree. And because we have a drip edge on here, and because that overhang encroaches into the gutter, it made it a challenge for us to install the gutter guard within the gutter. So in other words, screwing it to the front lip like you can see it is, and screwing it to the rear fascia board. So as a result, we slid it up under the first course of shingles, which is one of the prescribed ways of installing it. The good thing about installing it up under the shingles like we did is it gives it a little bit better slope, makes it a little bit more consistent installation across the panel. So you can see the micro mesh opening here is a pretty good size. Also on this screen, it's got kind of a reinforced ribbing, so you may be able to see there on screen, kind of a series of these ribs as I slide across there. That ribbing really serves two purposes. First, it helps reinforce the screen and give it a little bit more rigidity, because there is not a framework underneath it. It's just exposed to the gutter below, as you can see that hanger below it. Second, it acts as a water channel. So when the water comes across off the roof and then hits the screen, because of these ribs are vertical, they're running with the water, then the water comes down these channels, essentially gets pretty close to the front, then there's a downward flange, and it hits that flange and it swoops back inside the gutter. So a micro mesh system that is kind of a mid-priced gutter guard that has a nice screen on it. This product was actually invented by Alex Higginbotham. He's the guy who came up with the whole concept of micro mesh to begin with. His products actually appear all the way down here. He invented each of these products under different brand names. So this has been up for now 3 days, and you can see the debris. At this point, it's shingle granules and just some organic matter that's rolled off the roof that is sitting on top of here. This micro mesh screen is called Leaf Blaster. It's from the makers of Gutter Glove. A guy named Robert Lenny is the inventor of this product. This is very similar to our LeafLock system in that it's got a series of channels within the screen, so you can see that ribbing that helps reinforce the screen. makes it a little bit more rigid. The design difference here is that the screen is flat, and then it kind of flattens out here, or it kind of comes up at a little bit of an angle to act as a catch. So what happens is the water comes off the roof, hits the screen, follows these channels forward, and then this little bit of a transition acts as a brake for that water, so it helps kind of catch the water and drive it underneath the screen at the bottom side. It's a 3-part system, so it has a thin piece of aluminum across the front. It gets screwed into the gutter, and then it's got a piece of aluminum that is up under the shingle here. And we can't really see it at this point. I'll show it to you in a different detail at a different point. This product is designed to install under the first course of shingles and then screw down on the front lip. So like any of these systems, they all screw down on the front lip, and if they install under the shingle, the weight of the shingle holds it in place on the backside, so it's not being screwed or affixed to the roof or the shingles or the roof decking in any capacity on the backside. You can see here it just mimics the slope of the roof, which is a 12-12 slope. So it's a steep pitched roof, and this screen, is this particular product under the name Leaf Blaster is a professionally installed product, but he sells several very similar products under different names that are available at Costco, Home Depot, Lowe's, etc. So this will be kind of a representation of his mid-grade professionally installed systems, as well as his high-grade do-it-yourself installations. So as we just kind of pan across this, you can see how this has been performing the last 3 days. Again, a rainstorm last night, so what you see up here is what you might get after a good rainstorm. This product is Leaf Solution. The concept of this one is it's a 3-part system. It consists of a front leading edge here. It's available in different colors. It's got the screen down the middle with a framework behind it. In this case, it's an expanded aluminum framework, kind of a chicken wire, if you will, but it's rigid. And then it has a series of downward channels here, 3 channels that go across it, and those channels serve a couple of purposes. First, and I think foremost, it is designed to keep the screen in place. So you can see the screen here is really nice tight fitting between the framework, the chicken wire behind it, and the upper surface level here. So it is rigid. It's a nice rigid system, and it's tightly wound. So I think that's the first reason why those channels are there. The second reason is that water needs a break. So as water comes across the surface, you want to try to break it as many times as possible. In this case, you've got 3 opportunities to do it, and that helps slow the flow of the water. So that's the reason behind the design on this system. It is a panel system, so it does go up under the first course of shingles as well. And again, it screws to the front lip. The weight of the shingles holds it in place on the backside. It is a stainless steel screen, and this is a system that's designed to fit both 5 and 6 inch gutters. So regardless of the size of your gutter opening, you use the same panel. So it's got some versatility in that regard. This is a product that we sold up until, maybe 2012, 2013, somewhere in that ballpark. It was a product that I really liked. They had 2 versions of screen. This is kind of their standard screen, which is a really fine micro mesh, and then they had a high flow version of it. At some point they discontinued the high flow screen, which I thought was a mistake, because to me the high flow screen was a little bit more optimal in size than this was, at least in certain applications. And so when that went away, that really made us kind of question whether that was a product that we could support over time. I don't know where they are today. This is actually a product that we had left over from back in the day. But again, I was a fan of this. Now, if you look at it from a consumer standpoint, they always question these downward channels and kind of what happens within these grooves. So you're starting to see what happens within these grooves. There's a chance that the small matter can kind of get stuck into those grooves. My experience is it really didn't make much of a difference, and aesthetically you're not going to see this from the ground, but it certainly was an opportunity for something to stick in there. If I slide over here a little bit, you might even see a long pine needle that is sitting kind of parallel inside that channel. So there's definitely an opportunity for stuff to get stuck in there. But again, from an actual functioning standpoint, I didn't feel like it made much, if any, of a difference in most cases. This is Leaf Filter, probably the best known micro mesh gutter guard on the market. The reason why it's the best known gutter guard on the market is because it's the most heavily advertised product. The company that is the current owner of the product did not start out as the original owner of the product. He was just a dealer of this product. We were actually the dealer of it as well back in the 2008 to 2011 timeline. I'll tell you a little bit more about that story later, but the panel itself is a vinyl product. They call it virgin vinyl, but vinyl is vinyl. So essentially it's a plastic, and it's a panel that's designed to live within the gutter. So it gets extruded out of a machine, kind of like a spaghetti would get squeezed through a machine. It comes out in a form. In this particular case, it's got a series of vertical channels on it. You can see underneath the screen that act as ribs, and then it's got the screen that's inserted down the middle of that channel. So it's a two-part system, the framework being the underlying component of it, and then the screen gets inserted down the channel on the job site. You can see here what's going on with it. Because it sits a little bit flatter in the gutter, it's collecting the most debris so far. Again, we're 3 days into this experiment, but let me talk a little bit about the panel itself. So I mentioned that it's a plastic or PVC panel. It's designed to live within the gutter, so the panel itself has a built-in slope to it. So essentially it's lower at this end and higher at this end. It's designed to sit in the hangers, on top of the hangers inside your gutter. So whether you have the old spike and ferrule system, those long nails, or you have the modern day system like this has with an internal hidden hanger, it requires the support of that system to keep the product in place. If you don't have that support system in it, then it's likely that the product will sag and bow and drop inside the gutter. So we actually had to augment the gutter in this case. So all these other pieces have 2 hangers in them. This system has 3, just to give it the downward support that it needs to keep it from collapsing inside the gutter. So it's a plastic framework or a PVC framework. They call it virgin vinyl. They also say that the manufacturer used to say that they would treat the vinyl with a UV inhibitor, which would help minimize or prevent any expansion and contraction. And we'll see over time whether that really has any impact on this. But again, the primary difference between this system and the others in terms of its installation is it has to live within the gutter. So there's no way to put it up under the shingles. There's no way to secure it to the back. It does have an upper flange on the back of it, but again, it's plastic, and if you screw that in with any force to the fascia board, odds are it'll just kill the integrity of that flange, and it'll either break off when you're doing it, or it'll break off at some point in the future. So you can see here that we've screwed it in place on the front. Now it has slots where these screw holes are. So these are pre-drilled slots, and the idea behind this particular product is you don't want to screw it down too tight. against the gutter. If you screw it too tight, then it doesn't allow the vinyl to expand and contract in the way that it should. And this is one of the big mistakes of installing this product. If you screw it down too tight, then it's going to hold the product in place and it can't shift with the changing temperatures. But if you don't screw it down tight enough, then there's a chance that it can actually pop the screw heads out. So it's a bit of a balancing act to kind of drive it down and then loosen it up a little bit, just to make sure that you've got a good bite inside the metal to hold it into place. As I mentioned, the screen gets inserted down the channel. So the screen is roughly 3 or 3.5 inches wide, and it's we didn't caulk it in the place, so it's actually movable here. When we used to install it, we would caulk it both at the front here and at the back, and then let it set up, and then we'd install it into place. My understanding is that Leaf Filter no longer does that. They just insert the screen down the channel and leave it be. So we're going to just kind of follow their way of installing it. Now, because it sits flatter, you can see that screen is very fine. So it's a nice screen in terms of its ability to keep stuff out. You can see all the small stuff that it's keeping out. There's a random pine needle that rolled down last night. It's just kind of sitting here on the edge. Because it sits flatter inside the gutter, it's going to be more likely that leaves and debris are going to sit on top of it. So it'll be interesting to see how this performs over time. This is Master Shield, which is an aluminum framework gutter guard. So it has a single piece aluminum framework that is a panel. So it's designed to screw on the front lip of the gutter, and then that panel slides up under the shingles. So it's a system that can work with both 5 and 6 inch gutters. I even think that it could potentially work with 7-inch gutters. This is the subsequent offering to Leaf Filter. So the guy who developed initially Leaf Filter, this was his next generation product. So he essentially took the learning from Leaf Filter and he applied it to creating a better product in this called Master Shield. So there's some very distinct similarities between Master Shield and Leaf Filter, and because there's so many similarities, I've decided to place these two next to each other. The other ones are a little bit more randomized, but because these are products that he invented, I figured depicting them next to each other was as good a way as any to showcase how they perform. So let's talk about this one a little bit. Again, I mentioned it's got an aluminum framework. So this framework here has actually got a downward flange that overhangs the outside lip of the gutter. It has a channel here that's a series of weep holes. So this is kind of the last line of defense for any water that's kind of working its way down. If it gets to this point, then it's an opportunity for the water to go inside those weep holes. Then you have kind of the main body of the screen. It's got a downward flange that hooks to the front inside lip of the gutter to hold it in place so it doesn't move back and forth. And then you've got the screen area. Now the screen area is basically identical in size to Leaf Filter. And the screen itself is almost identical. So I've got these two next to each other. Let me see if I can. It's a bit of a close-up there. Apologize, but my ladder's in the way. So the screen opening is virtually the same size, maybe an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch difference in overall width. But and it also has kind of the same concept behind it. So this one has got a series of open slots, as you can kind of see beneath the screen. And then it's got a stair-stepping action. So because this is a single piece of aluminum that gets roll formed, it gets roll formed at a stair step. So as you kind of work your way up, it has a series of steps that helps slow the water flow down. Now most of that's available. You can see it kind of below the screen, but you can also see a little bit of it here in the screen itself. There's some, indentations there. So it's an interesting concept in that you're using a flat panel with a stair-step action in it to help kind of catch the water as it works its way down. What's interesting about this product and any product that has a framework behind it, it works on something called a capillary action, which is essentially a siphoning effect. So as the water comes off, transitions off the surface of the roof, hits the screen, because it's touching the framework behind it, it actually creates a downward draw and pulls the water through it. Kind of like the opposite of a vacuum cleaner, sucking up air. This is just drawing the water down. So again, a very fine micro mesh screen on this. In fact, I think this is probably the finest screen on the market. And it does come in two varieties. We've got a standard screen like this, and then we have a high flow version of it as well. Now, what's interesting about this screen, and one of the things that has kind of helped this product evolve over time, is that they found that, if you look here on my roof, you can see all this moss that is coming back to life. I'm not sure it's formed this quickly, but when I took a picture of it the other day, the moss wasn't as prevalent, not as visible on the roof. So we've had a fair bit of rain in the last couple of days. So one of the issues on north-facing or shaded slopes of a house or roof line is that the very fine screen didn't allow any of the organic matter to pass through, and it was more likely that something like a moss could actually land on it. I'll just take a little piece off of here. So you might get the moss that would sit on top of it, or form on top of it. Just whatever allows that to form at the roof level would allow it to form on the gutter guard level. And because the screen is so fine and it's not allowing anything to go through it, the moss could potentially grow up there. And we've seen time after time where that has occurred, and it's become problematic on some of the micro mesh screens. So what they did about 5 years ago was interweave copper, 3 strips of copper, into the screen itself. And as you may know, copper is an antibacterial metal, so essentially kills any organic matter. That's why we use it in plumbing pipes, because it doesn't build up with any of the organic matter that otherwise would not be good for us to drink. The same thing applies here at the gutter guard level. So we have 3 strips of copper here. You can kind of see them here in the middle, and then at the top. The idea is the water and the air kind of come across the top of that surface. It'll prevent any of that organic matter from building up on top of it, and should keep this screen nice and clear all day long. We're now on the south side of the garage. So if you look up on the roof, you can see that there's no algae, there's no lichen, there's no moss growing on the roof, or at least there's very, very little.